Hi, my friends, and here is the first lesson you will need for this week in reading, writing, and social studies. This week we are going to be going back for nonfiction, and our standard for this week is 3.10a, and that means that by the end of our lessons, you will be able to explain the author's purpose and the message within the text. So for this lesson today, I am going to be reviewing with you on how to read a nonfiction text and the 3 guiding questions I want the back of our minds to be thinking about, because that's going to help us reach our goal for this week. Okay? The first thing I want to show you how to do is how to access the texts for this week. Okay? So in our lesson plans, you'll click here. Okay? And I'll also include the link in the morning message. But you will click, and I'm already logged in, so I'm just going to open this up in a new window to show you how to log in. It will load the passage for you, but it's going to ask you to log in. All right? So the first thing you're going to do is click Login. You will click on I am a student. And then you're going to enter in our classroom password. That is SES301. And then you'll click Sign In. And that will take you to our text for this week. Which is The Snake That's Eating Florida. Now, if you want to, you can download it like this. If you want to access it offline, you can have the story read to you like normal. But I'm just going to click on Read the Story. And I'm going to read the story to you today. But that's how you get to your own copy, so you can look for text evidence to support your thinking and to follow along with me if you want to. All right, so this text is super cool, and already my brain is super excited to read it because I see so many amazing text features. Remember, the text, what we first do when we get to a nonfiction text is we survey the text to see what it's mostly about. That means that we look for those clues that the authors leave us, and that's often text features, headings, subheadings, bolded words, captions, photographs, diagrams, all that stuff that we learn about. That's there to give us clues and to tell us more and show us more than what the author is just saying in the text. That's why they're there. So let's survey the text and do some pre-reading together. All right, so the title of this text is The Snake That's Eating Florida. And already that sounds super cool because I don't think a snake can actually eat a state. That seems kind of impossible. So maybe the author means something else by that, but we'll have to read more to find out. I see that there is a subtitle that says, Deadly Pythons Are Taking Over a Beautiful Park. Can we stop them? Now, from what my schema knows about pythons is that they're usually pets. So I don't really understand, how is a pet taking over a park in Florida? It's interesting. And I see this here, think and read cause and effect. As you read, look for facts that tell you about how snakes are affecting other animals living in Florida. So I'm going to drop a quick sticky note right here because I have some thinking. I know that pythons are pets, but my question is, how are they hurting parks in Florida? Because they're pets, right? Interesting. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next page, just survey a little bit more, see what I can figure out. Oh, first thing I notice is that this is a huge snake. Their head is shaped like a pyramid. Now, my schema is telling me that I typically know that that means that I've heard that snakes with triangle-shaped heads are poisonous, but I know that pythons aren't poisonous, right? So that's going to be one of my questions. Are pythons poisonous? All right, and it says, Burmese pythons are often calm. This one doesn't seem to be mind being held by 9 kids at once. And I see some subtexts here, like little headings that say out of place, set free, snake invaders. And I see some things here. These are animals that I know live in Florida because I see them here in Texas too, like deer, bobcats, raccoons, rabbits. And it says snake snacks. It can take a Burmese python weeks to digest some of their bigger meals. Luckily, they don't eat humans. Well, that's a relief. I had no idea. I had no idea that a python could eat a whole deer. But now, me looking at this python here, I can kind of believe it. Whew. A long struggle is another heading I see. And I see a map here of Florida, and it says Everglades National Park is down here at the very tip of Florida. And the subtitle for this said that they were herding a park in America, so I'm wondering if they're talking about the Everglades National Park. This park at the bottom tip of Florida is bigger than the whole state of Rhode Island. The Everglades is home to more than 750 different animal species. And I see this beautiful photograph here of what I'm guessing is the Everglades. It looks kind of swampy. I see lots of Spanish moss hanging, and I see a lot of water. I see a crane there fishing for fish. So I'm wondering, like, if I were a snake, I would love to live here because it looks like it has everything that I need to survive. Yeah, so I don't understand, like, why a pet would be living in a park like that, though. That's still something that's confusing to me. Mom and babies. A female Burmese python can lay as many as 100 eggs in one nest. That is a lot of eggs. That means that one snake can have more than 100 babies at a time. That's a lot. Okay, well, I think it's time for me to start reading the text. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to be thinking to myself, what is this text mostly about? Okay? So based off of what I've read, I've seen a couple of things. I'm seeing that they're calling these pythons deadly. I know that they're typically pets, but for some reason they must no longer be pets. And I'm assuming the author is going to tell me why when I start reading the text. And that they are probably eating other animals in Florida that shouldn't be eaten by snakes. Pythons are not native to Florida. They're not there. They don't belong there. We brought them there as pets. So I'm wondering if the author is going to tell us about how these animals that maybe are pets, maybe some escaped, I don't know, are hurting the natural environment of the Everglades. Okay? I think that that's what this text is mostly going to be about, based off of the text features I have looked at. Now, my thinking may change as I read. And while I was pre-reading, I kind of activated my schema. I was thinking to myself, what do I already know about pythons, right? What do I know about the Everglades? What do I know about this environment? And we as readers should be doing that too. Whenever you're surveying an informational text, you're not only trying to figure out what this text is mostly about, you also want to be thinking, what do I know about this subject? Because while you're reading, you're going to be thinking about, what do I know? But you're also thinking, what is new to me? Okay? So there are 3 guiding questions that I want us to focus on this week while we're reading. The first one is the central idea. And that guiding question is, what is this text mostly teaching about? Okay? So that's the first thing I want us to be thinking about, because that kind of forms the foundation of our thinking. Then, once we have a good idea of the central idea, we can move on to author's message and author's purpose. So those guiding questions are, what is the bigger idea that the author wants you to learn from this? Because they tell us this in the text, but they want us to think bigger. What is the thing that the author wants us to infer? What is he trying to teach us? What do they want us to know? All right, then we can move on to author's purpose. Why did the author write the text? So those are our 3 guiding questions that we will be using while we read this informational text today. And that's what I want you to be thinking about, okay? Our brains work hard when we read informational texts. but we know this by now. All right, I'm really excited to start reading. The snake that's eating Florida. One January morning in 2003, visitors were exploring the Everglades National Park. This is a wild and beautiful place in Florida made up of wetlands. Okay, and look down here. Wetlands, a wet, swampy area. I learned about those in science with Miss Reed too. So it's a type of habitat where animals can live. And I think that goes on to that photograph that we see on the next page of all those swampy water, trees, and Spanish moss and all that good stuff. The golden grass stretched out in all directions. Frogs croaked and crickets chirped. The visitors were excited about the day. Maybe they'd see a rare bird or even a Florida panther. Okay. I didn't know that Florida had panthers. That's pretty cool. I'm saving that thinking. But the visitors were about to see something strange and horrible. A huge alligator was wrestling an enormous snake. That must have been something awful to see, but kind of cool. A snake wrestling an alligator? The visitors would learn that the snake was a Burmese python. The alligator had its jaws around the snake. The snake was wrapped around the alligator, and the animals fought like two monsters in a horror film. This wrestling match is a sign of a problem. A big, slithery problem. So now I'm wondering, like, how can this be a problem? Two predators fight in the wild all the time, right? So how can this be a problem, especially when we see predators fighting each other in the wild? Something must be coming up that's going to tell me this answer. Out of place. Burmese pythons are not from the United States. Okay, this species comes from southern Asia, but many years ago, park workers noticed Burmese pythons living in the Everglades. This surprised them. How did animals from halfway around the world get there? In the 1970s, people began selling Burmese pythons in the U.S. as pets. Some people think that baby pythons look cute, but these snakes grow. An adult Burmese python can be longer than a minivan. It can weigh up to 250 pounds. These snakes eat animals such as raccoons and even deer. The snakes have special jaws that allow them to open their mouths wide and eat animals that are bigger than their bodies. All right. So now I understand the problem. In Science with Miss Reed, we've been learning about food chains and food webs and what happens when there are too many predators for too little prey, or too much prey for too little predators, and how that can throw off the balance of the food chain. So now I understand that this species, these pythons, never belonged in Florida. They were introduced there by people. And I think I can infer that sometimes when the snakes get too big, people must leave them in the Everglades and set them free without thinking about how that hurts the environment. Now it all makes sense to me. So I think I'm going to track that thinking. Now it all makes sense. Pythons in the wild can throw off the food web of the Everglades. This makes sense. Now I understand. Set free. People who bought Burmese pythons were often sorry they did, but they didn't know what to do next. What would you do with a giant snake that eats live bunnies? Ooh, I don't know. Many people decided to set their snakes loose outside, but that wasn't a good idea. Other pythons may have been set free by accident. In 1992, Florida had a hurricane. Its strong winds wrecked buildings, including one building that held a collection of reptiles. Hundreds of baby Burmese pythons were suddenly on the loose. Some of them may have ended up in the Everglades. The warm, moist climate there is perfect for pythons. And under here it says climate, usual weather in a place. Okay, so there were two ways that the pythons were free, right? Some people put them in the Everglades because they were too much work. And on the other side, there was a hurricane and lots of buildings were damaged, and sometimes the pythons would escape. So now I have a better understanding, and it's all coming better into back into one clear picture of what this text is mostly about. I'm beginning to understand that these animals, whether they were set free on accident or on purpose, are having a harmful effect on the environment. So let's keep reading. Snake invaders. Park workers worried that these snakes could harm the environment, and an environment is a natural place. Burmese pythons are an invasive species. Invasive means taking over and doing harm. That's a species that moves into a new area, takes over, and eats too many of the animals and plants already living there. So that kind of goes back to what we already been learning in science, how, when the food chain is not balanced, it can really mess things up for all the animals living there, not just the ones in the direct food chain. Many invasive species live in the U.S. They cause a lot of problems. The Burmese pythons in the Everglades have eaten so many animals that a lot of them are disappearing. Lots of foxes are being eaten by snakes. There aren't many cottontail rabbits anymore. Raccoons, deer, possums, and bobcats are almost gone as well. So now I'm really understanding with what they mean by invasive species. They come in, whether on accident or by purpose, and they're just animals. They're just trying their best to survive. But as a result, they're eating everything in that natural environment. I don't think that any of the animals listed, right? Raccoons, deer, possums, bobcats, cottontail rabbits, foxes. I don't think any of those animals have adaptations to deal with a predator like the Burmese python, because that's not what's in their natural environment. They never evolved to deal with that. Right? Like their natural predators are alligators and things like that. And now I'm wondering, my question I guess is, what is happening to the natural predators in the Everglades because of these pythons? What is happening to those alligators? Are they dying off because there's not enough food for them to survive? I don't know. A long struggle. It is now against the law to bring Burmese pythons to the U.S. to sell, but it might be too late for that to help. There have been as many as 150,000 pythons living in the Everglades. No one knows the exact number. Trying to count brown and green snakes would be impossible because they blend in with the wetlands. This makes it very hard to find them. People are coming with smart ways to try to solve the python problem. Scientists are finding and trapping snakes. Wildlife experts in Florida are asking anyone who sees a python to report it on a special website. Lots of people are hunting the snakes. A python hunt started in January 2016. More than 100 pythons were caught. As one park ranger says, "We are at war." So far, the battle seems a lot like that wrestling match between the alligator and the python. The struggle will go on for a long time. And right now, nobody can say for sure who will win. Now, this text feature here makes a lot more sense, where it says a female Burmese python can lay as many as 100 eggs in one nest. Now I understand the problem, because all of these pythons were set free, and those pythons started making more pythons. And just one female in one nest can have 100 eggs, which is as many pythons that were caught in the python hunt in January of 2016. So they did all of this work and it only did a little bit of difference. And because of these pythons who really don't have any other natural predators, they're just taking over this environment and making it their own, but hurting all of the other animals that live there. And it's not the python's fault, right? That's what I'm thinking. They're just pythons. They're just doing what they do. You know, where they come from in Asia, they probably have a food chain already in place where everything happens for a reason and they fit right in because they have predators that keep their population down from hurting and eating all of the prey further down the food chain. But here in Florida, they don't have that. Man, this article gave me a lot to think about. So now I guess our idea is to we kind of have a good idea of what this text is mostly about, right? And we can write that in one clear sentence, which is what we're going to be focusing on in lesson 2, taking all of this writing for today, all of this thinking that we've done, and filling in our graphic organizer. So this is a good stopping place for our lesson for today. And tomorrow, we're going to take all of this thinking and wondering and questioning that we had while we were reading this informational text. We're going to transfer that to the graphic organizer so that you can have practice for your performance task this week. So if you'd like, you can try to find some other texts for you to enjoy in Epic. They have a ton of really good ones to look at, so you can continue to practice this. Or you can get a sneak peek and read the performance task text. Ooh, that was a mouthful, about amazing penguins, and that's a good one too if you want to get a sneak peek about that. But you guys did great. I'll see you tomorrow.